Right, so today, before we proceed now, until so far, what we have done is that we have integrated our FTD with FMC. And for the FTD, we have provided the interface, IP addresses. That's the only thing we have done. And we have looked into the different interface types and all those things. Now, in today's class,
Yes.
what we are going to look is that now I have integrated my FTD with FMC. First, I need to get certain things to be set up with the FTD now. So number one is that I want the SSH connection. For now, I cannot take any SSH connection for my FTD. And number two, I want DNS servers to be resolved. And number three, I want to set up like a syslog, SNMP. So these are the pretty basic things which you have to set up before you proceed with the FTD. Now, if you remember,
Can you
while in
also
yep,
can you also add LDAP authentication? That's number 4.
LDAP authentication, that's a different one. We will look into specific that is in the policies, don't worry. But
Okay.
for the management, if you want to go ahead with the LDAP, that's a very complicated configuration. So that's why I did not include in this one.
Okay.
Yes, you can do with the management interface when you want to do the SSH connection. You can go ahead and do with the LDAP, your Active Directory, or any database which consists of the authentications. But it's a pretty complicated configurations which you need to have a very good knowledge of these, deep knowledge of these things.
So this LDAP, if you want to do LDAP, you're gonna do it with the FMC, right? Not direct, not with the FTD.
Yeah, we kind of integrate these things with the FMC, which is pretty easy. But when I want the SSH connection to the management, that to be verified with the LDAP, that's where the configuration becomes complicated
Okay.
because we
All
have to
right.
do certain deep, what do we say, like a very advanced configuration on these LDAPs and AD or databases so that it can support that configuration while accessing the SSH on the management. I
Okay,
already saw that
but
one, but it's very complicated, and that's why I did not include it in this one.
yeah, but we can include the
Yeah,
integration of the
that's
FMC,
FMC.
just
It's
the
a different
FMC.
story. When we come to the identity policy, that's where we will look into detail how we integrate that one, how we download the
Okay.
groups, users, and all those things. But for now, I'm just
Okay.
talking with respect to the FTD, which are very basic. As an administrator, you need to have an access of the SSH connection. You have to make sure that the DNS name should be resolved properly. And also you have to make sure that at least Syslog server or SNMP server is connected to the FTD so that you can monitor and configure via SMTP for the daily purpose. No need to come every day like for the FMC and get details. Right. So that's what we have to do, number one. Once we are done with that one, is that this is the first thing I will be doing. And another thing is that I want to scan my network. That is the next thing. So before I proceed with doing any other configuration, I want to make sure that I want to do a configuration my FTD whenever the any devices are being connected to my networks on the DMZ or inside network, except the outside. I don't want any devices which are connected outside. So I just want only the devices connected inside and the DMZ. I want to scan what type of devices those are, like the routers, switches, PCs, Linux machines, what are those. So it does take a lot of time to scan those things. It will, but if you configure right now, what happens is like when you're doing the labs, slowly the detection will be becoming precise and you will get details about that one. So that's the next thing I want to do. So once I do these two things, that's when I am set up with the FTD now, with the basic setup, and I'm good to go with the another thing is that the routing. All right, so that's what we are going to do. Now, to do this one, these things, there is something called as a platform setting. If you remember that FTD is a platform now, right? So that's why we do have a separate option for that one, that is the platform settings. So let's go ahead and configure that one now. So I will go to my devices, and inside the devices, you will see the platform settings. Also, I will go to my party first. I will try to see FTD1 dot. It's giving me the SSH action. That means there should be a policy over here. So these are the pretty basic things which you need to do before you go ahead with your FTD. And after that, as soon as we configure the policies and the different things over there, that's where you will see the precise scanning things, operating system, devices, and all those things. All right, so we do not have any policy. Still, it is allowing me to take the SSH connection. That's pretty good. FTD1 dot. Yeah, it's allowing me to take the SSH connection even I don't have the policies, but I think this might be an issue with the EVNG, but most of the time when I try to take the access without configuring this policy, definitely it will reject that SSH connection. Now, what kind of a device you do have? Threat defense settings. So click on new policies and it will ask you whether if it's a firepower over ASA, then you have to select firepower settings, but I do have the FTD one, so I will set the threat settings. So I'll just give a name, platform, PLD, and I will select the only device I do have, that one. So add to that policy. And if you like to give the description, you can give the description like FTD1 and click on save. So now once you create this policy, it will give you different options on the left-hand side, what you want to do. And if you want to do the ARP inspection, mostly we don't worry about it. Banner, still we don't worry about it, because whenever you take an SSH connection or the HTTP connection for your chassis, that's where it will display the banner. DNS, this is what I want to configure. I want to enable the DNS. And currently I don't have any group for the DNS. That means I have to create an object for the DNS. I will click on add. I will give a name as DNS group. And I will say that default domain will be syslog.com. That's my domain. Now DNS servers 16.1.10, 150.1.7.2. So this is my internal DNS, which will resolve the custom DNS names, and this will be the ISP, which will resolve the DNS name of the internet. Click on save. So that group is been now created. Just select that group now. And now it is asking you on which interfaces you want to enable the DNS. I want to enable the DNS on all three interfaces, because whenever the user is trying to resolve the DNS name on the inside interface, still I want to resolve it. Whether it might be going to outside, I want to resolve it everywhere. So I will click on save before I proceed. So now coming to the external authentication, this is where I was talking about. So that if you do have any external authentication like LD, LDAP and all those things, we will go ahead and configure, but pretty complicated one, which I'm not going to do. HTTP access, that's what I was talking. If you remember that in that port channel things, I said that you are not able to configure the port channel in the virtual FTD, but you are able to configure in the physical FTD. So this is where if you enable that HTTP, so what you are going to do is that you are going to tell that HTTPS and the IP address or the DNS name of your FTD, that will open up with your physical chassis diagram, and it will also show you all the ports which are being configured and which are free, and you do have an option to configure the port channel over there. Now ICMP access or SSH access, you see that this is the one. So I will go ahead and click on add. I will
sorry, the HTTP access.
Yes.
I thought that should be option to set the rules to access the device through HTTP.
No, HTTP, if you remember in the ASA, that was giving access to the ASDM, right? It will allow you to download the ASDM application. But in the FTD, it will allow you to access your chassis, physical chassis.
Yep.
Now, in this physical chassis, when you have not every, it will show you the physical chassis, but it will also show you the ports. If it's a modular FTD, it will show you the different line cards over here, and it will say that, okay, these are the different ports which have been configured, and these are the different ports which are being like free, and it will give you certain options, extra options like advanced options, which you can configure via CLI also. You can also configure via HTTPS access over here. So it's a little different one compared to the FTD. When in the ASA, it will give you access to download the ASDM. Now, instead of ASDM, you do have a firepower device manager. Right? So this is the software. Yep.
This HTTPS access,
yes,
is to be able to access the device
physical
through
chassis.
the web UI.
Yes.
Through one of the interfaces, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's all I need to know.
Now, for the ASDM, if you want to configure your FTD using like an ASDM application, we do have an application known as a Firepower Device Manager. So using this application, you can configure your FTD like an ASDM. So that's the difference over here. Now with the SSH access, again, I will go ahead and add, and here I will say that any IP address. So now it should be pretty careful here. You have to say that only management IP address or the certain IP address which you want to allow. So you can create a group in that object, create an object. In that object, you can define multiple networks or multiple IP addresses, what you like. But giving SSH access, it should be like mostly specific. So since this is a lab, so I'm not worried about it. But you see that I don't have any management interface here. So it is giving me option to type in the interface name. So I will type in the interface name as management 0/0. So if I go back to my right, so this is my FTD. So interface IP brief. And you see that management 0/0. That's how exactly you have to write. So I'm writing management 0/0 and click on add. You see that management 0/0. Now my SSH is access is enabled on management 0/0. Click on OK and click on save.
But right now you just show me the command line. That's SSH as well, right?
Sorry.
The command line of the FTD you just showed me. This is also SSH.
Nah,
even before you enable
console. This is the console.
Oh, okay. This is console. Okay.
Yes, this is the console.
Okay.
Now SMTP, this is with respect to your email servers. And SNMP, this is with respect to your SNMP. If you do have SNMP server, you can go ahead and configure those things. Syslog, I think I do have the Syslog. So I will say enable logging on failover unit. I don't have a failover. Send debug message as a, so whatever you configure, whenever you have a debug message over here, it will send that message on the Syslog servers.
What's SSL?
Sorry?
SSL.
SSL, where is that one? Where is, okay, this one.
Above Syslog, yes.
I will come to that one when we finish that. I'm not sure exactly, but let's look onto it. Now specify the FTP server information. If you want to save that into FTP server, you can do that one. Specify flash size if you want to define the flash size. Since nowadays the devices are coming with a large number of memories and storage, so storage shouldn't be a problem anymore now. All right, so now I enable the logging which I want. So I will go ahead to logging destination. This is where I will define where is my Syslog server, and logging destination Syslog server, and click on add. What are the different messages you like? You can go ahead and click on adding, and it's for the emergency event class. It's like pretty much you are defining certain parameters, saying to your FTD that I want these parameters which should be sent to my Syslog server. So it's a pretty, what do you say, like custom. You can define it as your business requirement, according to your business requirement. Email setup, if you like to get an email, so set up the email. Event list, don't worry, rate limit, that's not Syslog server. Now this is where you will define the Syslog server. I think click on add, yes. On which interface it is located, what is the IP address of the Syslog server. If you are enabling the secure logins, you can go ahead and enable that one, but pretty much no one will configure until and unless it's a larger organization. So these are the pretty basic things which you have to configure before you proceed with your FTD. Now time synchronization, don't worry about it. Time zone, if you want to change, you can change it over here. And the SSL. Now SSL settings is disabled because export compliance is not enabled on the smart license icon. To be honest, I really have no idea exactly what this mean by. So you can go ahead and check with the documents of the FTD, but currently no. All right, so that's what is the platform settings. That's where we configure certain basic things.
So those settings, the platform settings, will be pushed to the FTD from FMC.
Yes. Everything will be pushed from FMC to the FTD. So FMC is your database where you will save each and everything before you push the configuration to the FTD.
Okay.
Now, I have done with the platform settings. Now let's go ahead and do with the network discovery. I will go to my policies. Within that policy, you do have a network discovery. Now, by default, it is already scanning, but the only thing is that I need to define.
Sorry, can you go back? So you go to policy.
Yep. In policy, you do have a network discovery.
Network discovery. So that is going to discover all the devices directly connected to the FTD.
Yes, but I think is that you need to define the zone. So if you see that currently it is looking for all the networks, but you have to define the zones. So there are no zones defined. That means where it's going to scan for. Correct? It's not going to scan for anything because you did not define the interface. So what I'm going to define is that inside and DMZ. So these are the two interfaces which are located inside my FTD. So that's the reason I'm scanning in the inside zone, scanning in the DMZ zone. I'm not scanning in the outside and never scan on the outside.
So sorry, does this only detect only devices directly connected?
No, indirectly connected also. So if I go back to my topology
all the devices on the network.
Yep. What happens is like how this one is working is like I will just say to my FTD that any traffic coming onto this inside interface and the DMZ interface, detect that one, detect the host. Okay, so for example, my PC is over here, which is not directly connected, but when I initiate the traffic, my FTD will detect the traffic and my FTD will send a scan probe to that one, and it will find out that what kind of operating system or what kind of host it is, what kind of operating system it is running, and what will be the vulnerabilities of that one.
So that means if you have another firewall between your FTD and other devices or router, you have to have a CA that permit that traffic.
So you're saying that this is the FTD, and again you do have an FTD between that one. That's what you're saying? Yeah, it doesn't matter until and unless it is able to detect the traffic, it will try to scan that one. And this is the firewall means you need to allow the traffic for the scanning.
All right, let's assume that you have where you have router right now.
Yep.
Let's assume you have another firewall there, internal core firewall.
Yep.
You know, between your let's assume where you have ER router, let's assume that is an FTD2.
Yes.
For your core network, right?
Sure.
If FTD1 is gonna detect the hosts on VLAN 100, that traffic from FTD1 has to be allowed on FTD2. That scan. What port does it use to scan?
There are different ports which will be used to scan. Since this is an internal FTD, definitely I will be allowing traffic which is coming from outside.
Okay.
So now coming to the Nmap, this is the scanning tool which will be used. So there are different ports for that one. You can allow those ports specifically so that the scanning can take place. Okay. Because FTD is going to send the probe to that PC. So basically scanning, how it works is like whenever you enable the scanning, the device will send the probe. So it will try to do the probe and it will try to get the details of that particular host. So now this FTD, if you remember FTD, we are when you do have inside outside DMZ, doesn't matter by default the traffic is being blocked. So no zones can communicate with each other. So you have to specifically allow that ports the particular traffic in order to bypass. So if you do not, if you're saying that you are just allowing the HTTPS and if you're not allowing the Nmap port numbers, then scanning will not take place. Because there is an FTD. If it was a router, I shouldn't have any problem with that one. Router switch, I shouldn't be having any problem. But since it's an firewall, it will block the traffic because it's a stateful inspection. Right, so that's why you have to say that, okay, in my current topology, I do not have anything. So it's just a router, so it shouldn't be a problem. Now, while doing the scanning, it's only looking for the application right now. I want to look for the host. I want to look for the user also. I want to know what is the host is, who is the host is, what the operating system is, and its details. I want to know the user. So in future, we are going to configure the identity policy. That's where you will be detecting the user. So I want that scanning to be done right now because I did not configure any identity policy right now, but still it will try to scan that probes and click on save. So once we done the identity policy, that's when it will become pretty much easy to detect who is the user and all those things. Okay, pretty much these are the two things which you have to finish first, and I will just go ahead and deploy this one. So now once I deploy this one, I should get the access to the SSH access. I should be able to resolve the DNS name. I should be able to resolve the other things.
Okay, give me
So
1 minute. I'll be right back while the policy is deploying.
Sure.